Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, or whenever you see this. My name is Jerome Ellis, and I am in the Justice and Human Rights class at Eternal University. And I wanted to present to you some thoughts, just kind of give you some insight on the studies that I've made, and I will attach resources in the end to let you know where I got the information that I'm presenting today. So let's jump in because we don't want to waste any time. The voice of transitional injustice, esteemed as equal. See if I can get my pointer to work here. Down there. Hey, it works. All right, good. So I picked transitional justice, and briefly, transitional justice points to the ways countries or nations emerge from periods of conflict and repression and address large-scale or systematic human rights violations. These violations are most often so serious that the normal methods of criminal justice or justice systems just they aren't able to provide an adequate response for these large-scale injustices. So I want to jump into a question about transitional justice. What happens? What happens when the tentacles or roots of that period of conflict remain and they resurface? They resurface in regional or isolated or local areas of that nation where it was assumed that that period of conflict came to an end, and that, it had worked through, as I put this timeline on there, as this progression of repression and truth and justice. What happens when this conflict, when it comes back up? All right. So a couple of questions. Should efforts of transitional justice take center stage again? I mean, do we go right back to where we started? Should each focus event or regional area of conflict be alerted and then responded to? So should it just be announced and say, hey, this is bad, we want to come back and take a look at this? Or, is there reform without form? A lot of times, these key words get kicked around, reformation or reforming in policing per se, because that's the angle, that's the scope that we're going to go down and take a look at. How do you get reformation, or how do you get reform if the original form was already unjust? And then is there reconciliation without causation? Reconcile means to cause, to coexist in harmony, to cause. So how is there reconciliation without truth and causation? To coexist, you have to know who you're coexisting with, the truth of it, and then there has to be a causation into that harmony. All right. So let's narrow the scope a little bit more. Let's kind of dive a little bit deeper into this conversation. Whose voices are we talking about? First of all, the African-American cry for equality in the United States, especially with policing encounters. So my writing will focus more towards basically esteeming Black Americans as any other American to the tune of white Americans. That's actually the parallel that I make there in the equality piece. And seeing what that looks like and how that works and why there's a belief that does not exist at this time. Is there evidence of local injustice with policing is what we're going to take a look at. Are the current American policing reform efforts reactionary or transitional? And then my argument is that the nation's period of conflict transitioned as justice transitions. So that's what we'll kind of take a look at. Transitional justice must also stop ignoring violations of economic and social rights violations. So it's more of an axis of race, socioeconomic. As a matter of fact, it's an asterisk of many factors that come to a point, and we want to take a look at how that works. So uncovering local historic events of injustice towards African Americans helped establish the dialogue that's necessary, I believe, that inspire, the growth that we're looking for, the grace that we're looking for, forgiveness and healing, and the hope for equality that we're longing for. All right. So let's get to some common ground. Common ground initiatives are initiatives that take humans to a place of common compassion and love. They should be the catalyst of equality, that reconciliation, equality in systems of aid, of systems of even correction, of protection, and of governance. So what I want to put before you is that in the policing efforts, I believe that some truths should be accepted and acknowledged and then identified. The identified pieces, I believe that's important, is to identify the common ground efforts that link all people together that need justice, that are in need of justice. So it's kind of like putting all the cars on the train. The middle car doesn't get jealous of the car that's not in the middle, and the caboose, as long as you're connected and moving down the tracks. So connecting those common grounds for all people and doing justice in that effort, uncovering those ugly truths, and then bringing some justice to those as the train continues to move down the track. That's kind of the model that I'm following here. So here's what I want to identify. Things that go across the board. Mental health intervention. It goes across the board with raising awareness and reducing stigma, de-escalation in policing, the training that shows officers how to come into something that's escalated and de-escalated through verbal and nonverbal before there's force use. Jail diversion programs that help people to get to the treatment instead of jail. Local mental health authority outcomes as far as partnering with them and trying to see in that vein how to put that car on the tracks as it would be, and to keep it moving in a positive direction. Social services, housing assistance, homeless outreach. These are things that traditionally policing hasn't involved themselves in. I believe that as they will involve themselves in these areas, that they will hear those voices and those truths and those stories and those fears, and they'll begin to kind of unravel some of the things that have, uproot, as it will, as I spoke of earlier, uproot some of those things that have caused injustices in the past. Job placement training, child and adult protective service efforts, and those kind of things. Just partnering with Health and Human Services, and food distribution, and vaccinations, and all this. What does this have to do with policing? Well, partnering in those efforts give you a new identity. That new identity will help create the reconciled relationship, is what I think. Educational support, telling the true stories of the past and involving, cultural diversity, education, and things of that nature. The truth of policing, and insert that into regular training, that reoccurs, so that those officers have that information before them. And then, obviously, the justice piece, finding those wrongs and prosecuting those wrongs, those injustices that, we find in that search of identifying common ground, and the formation of proper justice systems and safeguards. All right. And then uprooting the hate. So there are a couple of things that we have to face. And when we face them, just be honest about them. There is an ugly truth that exists. There's a truth that plagues this nation when the ignorant subset of individuals, whether they have authority or not, when the ignorant subset of individuals, commonly white in this country, when they declare you an enemy, there's no extent as far as expense, and we've read this in some of the writings, legal procedures, as far as how far those individuals will go to try and maintain what they perceive as an advantage, even if it violates the rights of others in the process. So how do we uproot that hate? Just create a safe space to add to the shared pool of understanding. Got that out of a book called Crucial Conversations. And acknowledge the hate. Acknowledge what it is. And then as Grable and Schmeising and Zuniga have written in Doing Justice to Justice, do justice on all levels. Work through the complexities of identifying those unjust moments, where Black Americans were rights were violated, social, economically, the bodily human rights, the list goes on. And then work towards the causation of making them equal. My thesis in my paper speaks to just that, that until this Black American is equal to a white American, then those transitional efforts, they're in vain. They're in vain. So just want to put some thought into that and start dialogue. And so grateful for this opportunity to share with you today. So God bless you. God bless you. Blessings upon you. And we'll talk to you next time.